rules now in place for the trial of impeached Attorney General Ken Paxton, and his wife will play a role.
And indeed, many of the accusations concern infidelity by the Attorney General, so that will be awkward on a number of levels.
Why her presence in the trial could influence the outcome. We dig deeper into the rules.
A new Texas law aims to boost businesses. Opponents call it the Death Star and say it takes too much power away from local governments. Why the lawmaker who wrote it says the state needs more laws like this.
Plus, we talk to the man behind an attempt to bring Texans the largest property tax cut ever. What's different about this plan, and can it end the standoff between the state's top leaders?
Produced from the Capitol in Austin and airing statewide, this is the award-winning State of Texas.
Hello and thank you for joining us. I'm Ryan Chandler.
And I'm Monica Madden. Josh Hinkle is out this week. We now know when the fate of impeached Attorney General Ken Paxton will be decided, with the Texas Senate set to convene as a jury on September 5th.
And on Wednesday night, senators approved the rules that will govern that trial. Among them, implications for transparency and for the role of State Senator Angela Paxton, the defendant's wife. State Senator Angela Paxton barred from voting, but allowed to listen in as the Senate decides her husband's fate.
So that will be awkward on a number of levels.
But just her presence in the trial could still influence the outcome, because conviction requires 2/3 of the senators present.
Whether she votes to acquit her husband or doesn't vote at all has the same effect. She won't be counted as a vote towards conviction. So I think some sort of compromise was reached that lets her sit there, not say a word, not vote, but in a way still basically not cast a vote to convict her husband.
Everyone involved was also placed on a strict gag order.
No members of the court shall discuss or comment on any matter relating to the merits of the proceedings before the court of impeachment.
The only rule read aloud, reminding members that all are prohibited from speaking about the trial, including advocating in the press or to each other. The rules were taken kindly by the House and their prosecutors. House General Investigating Chairman Andrew Murr saying they respect the importance of a fair impeachment trial, and prosecutors Rusty Hardin and Dick DeGuerin saying the rules provide a fair trial for both sides. The trial's presiding officer promising just that.
And the citizens of Texas can count on the Senate of Texas to have a fair and just trial.
3 senators voted against the rules. That was Angela Paxton and fellow Republican Bob Hall, as well as Austin Democrat Sarah Eckhart. Eckhart wrote an explanation about why she voted no and had that placed in the Senate Journal before the vote. She wrote that she believes the rules unfairly favor Paxton and that they give the Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, quote, near total control over the proceedings. She also raised a concern with what she called the unprecedented ability of the defense to win a dismissal of an article of impeachment by a simple majority vote.
Joining us now for analysis is Scott Braddock, editor of the Quorum Report, covering all things Texas politics. Scott, thanks for joining us.
Good to be here.
So, Senator Eckhart raised some concerns about the powers that the lieutenant governor is going to have during this trial, presiding over it. Is any of that unusual, this level of control he has, at least in this context?
The lieutenant governor has spent about 20 years working to consolidate power in his office and in himself in particular, and I didn't see why that was going to change for an impeachment trial. He's been working on the Senate rules since he first ran for the Senate, going back to 2006, to change the threshold for what it takes for a bill to come to the floor. Really ends up consolidating power in the lieutenant governor's office. So I'm not surprised about it, but we only have 2 examples in the past on record for impeachments. One was of a judge in South Texas, the other was of a governor back in 1917. And so there's not a whole lot of precedent to pull out those old documents and dust those off and figure out how to do this. They're kind of flying blind on a lot of this.
Yeah, that may be why this was not a smooth process at all, getting these rules done. The original committee had 3 weeks to work on it, I believe, and then once they were presented to all the senators, it took almost 2 full days to hammer all the details. We saw them recess and come back and recess and come back. But they've been very tight-lipped about what they were discussing behind closed doors. Do you have any sense on what the holdups or the disagreements on these rules were?
There was not a lot of chatter out of those closed-door meetings. The senators, I can tell you, are taking it very seriously, that they're not supposed to comment either publicly or privately about what's going on in these proceedings. They're taking their job as jurors seriously. I do believe, in just observing the process, that the major sticking point had to be, what will the role of Paxton's wife, who is a state senator, what will her role be? And again, they had to thread this needle carefully because the Constitution says that the Senate can come up with its rules and maybe create a situation for recusals, but it also says that all senators need to sit for the trial. Now, I do believe that there's a mechanism by which they could have completely excluded Angela Paxton, but they chose not to do that. They left it such that she can be present, but it's important to note she can't vote on the outcome at the end of the trial, and she can't be in the closed-door deliberations of the Senate, and both of you have covered the Senate, you know this. The meeting in the Senate that's the most important is the one they always have behind closed doors before they come out on the floor and do whatever they're going to do. And so if Angela Paxton was planning, let's just say this is her plan, if she was planning to be in that room to advocate for her husband, she won't be. I would say that if you held the vote today, there's probably a majority of senators who would vote to convict, but not a supermajority. My head counts around 17 senators.
Wow. Wow.
You know, from the other parties, we've heard almost unanimous praise of these rules from both counsels, from the prosecutors and the defense. From the House impeachment managers, they said that this lays out a fair trial. Is that the general sense, or are there any other concerns that you're hearing about these rules?
Well, there were only 3 no votes. I mean, it's important to point out. So the Senate is essentially on the same page. There's always, I mean, when they debate the most important work product of the legislature, the budget, there's often maybe 1 or 2 no votes. There's always some dissent. But I think for Republicans and Democrats, and for the folks who are on both sides of this, Paxton supporters and those who want to see him removed, they got probably the best deal that they could have gotten. I think a lot of this was a compromise, and that's why it did take so long behind closed doors to come up with these rules.
All right, Scott Braddock of the Quorum Report, thanks for coming on.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
Is a bill that takes power away from local government good for the Texas economy?
And I'm so proud of that bill, and I think it is going to be a boon to the Texas economy.
Opponents call it the Death Star bill. Why the man who wrote it says it should instead be seen as a new hope.
The lieutenant governor says senators just passed the largest tax cut in world history. We'll talk to the author of the plan that aims to end the tax standoff between Texas leaders.